In August of 2004, French police were conducting a training exercise in a restricted zone of the Parisian underground, an area rarely entered by anyone except city engineers. Deep beneath the Trocadéro, under the 16th arrondissement, they came across a tarp marked "Construction Site, No Entry." They pushed past it and found something that should not have existed. Behind the tarp was a cavern nearly 4,000 square feet wide. It contained a fully functional cinema. There were professional projectors, a library of films from 1950s noir to modern thrillers, tiered seating carved directly into the rock. Next to it was a bar and a restaurant with tables and chairs. They even found a couscous cooker and a collection of fine wine. The police were stunned. They left to return with reinforcements and a forensics team. When they came back 3 days later, the power lines had been cut, the equipment was gone, the bar was empty. In the center of the room was a single note: "Do not try to find us." This wasn't a movie set, this wasn't a prank. This is the reality of the world beneath Paris, a 200-mile labyrinth of tunnels, bones, and hidden communities. Welcome to the Lost World Project. But the cinema isn't the only ghost story the police have found. In the early 1990s, a group of explorers found a video camera on the ground in a deep, uncharted gallery. When they played the tape, they saw a man wandering through the tunnels. He seemed lost. As the minutes ticked by, his breathing became panicked. He eventually dropped the camera and ran into the darkness. To this day, the man has never been identified, and no body was ever found. It serves as a chilling reminder: the tunnels don't just hide people, sometimes they swallow them. Paris is famous for its skyline, but while millions of tourists look up at the City of Light, they are walking on a hollow shell. Paris didn't begin as a city of light, it began as a city of stone. During the Roman era, builders discovered a unique limestone beneath the ground, now called Lutetia limestone. To build the Louvre and the Notre Dame, they had to carve the earth below. For centuries, miners hollowed out massive blocks, creating a Swiss cheese network beneath the growing city. But as the centuries passed, the city forgot about the holes it had dug. By the 1700s, Paris was no longer resting on solid ground. In 1774, the debt came due. A massive section of the Rue d'Enfer, literally Hell Street, collapsed. Imagine the horror of the residents as a 100-foot deep sinkhole swallowed houses, carriages, and people in the dead of night. King Louis XVI realized his capital was literally disappearing into the earth. He created the Inspection Générale des Carrières. Their mission: map the darkness before it consumed the light. One man, Charles Axel Guillemot, spent his life in these tunnels. He didn't just map them, he reinforced them. Every street you walk on today in Paris is mirrored by a tunnel below, reinforced with stone pillars. If you could peel back the pavement, you would see a city of pillars holding up the city of cafes. But the tunnels weren't destined to stay empty. By the late 18th century, Paris was suffocating. The Cimetières des Innocents had been the city's main burial ground for 10 centuries. It was so overcrowded that the ground level had risen 10 feet above the surrounding streets. The tipping point came in 1780. In a house on the Rue de la Chabrie, a basement wall collapsed under the pressure. It wasn't dirt that came through the wall. It was a literal tide of decomposing bodies. The stench was so toxic it was said to turn milk sour and spread disease through the air. The solution was as macabre as the problem. The government decided to move the dead underground. For 2 years, the Grand Migration took place. Every night, black draped wagons covered in flowers rolled through the streets. Priests led torchlit processions chanting the office of the dead as millions of bones were lowered into quarry shafts. But they didn't just dump them. The workers, perhaps driven by a strange sense of artistry, began to stack them. They created walls of femurs. They fashioned altars out of skulls. They turned a dump site into a monument. Today, nearly 6 million Parisians rest there. It is the largest grave in the world. Whenever Paris faced chaos above ground, its people turned to the shadows below. During the French Revolution, the bodies of those executed by the guillotine, including Robespierre and Danton, were thrown into these tunnels, their remains mingling with the commoners. But the most remarkable chapter came during World War II. While Nazi officers slept in luxury hotels, the French resistance lived beneath them. Colonel Roll Tanguy, a leader of the resistance, set up his command post in a bunker deep beneath the Place d'Enfer Rochereau. The geography of this underground war was mind-bending. In the Latin Quarter, the German Luftwaffe had built a high-tech bunker with reinforced concrete walls and ventilation systems. Unknown to them, just 500 yards away, through a series of narrow, ancient limestone passages, the resistance was operating their own headquarters. There were stories of echo wars, where resistance fighters could hear the muffled sound of German boots marching through the tunnels above them. They had to move in absolute silence, sometimes using felt-wrapped shoes to avoid detection. The Nazis eventually tried to flood certain sections of the tunnels to flush out the rats, but the resistance knew the labyrinth better. They used secret cat holes to bypass the floods, emerging behind enemy lines to commit sabotage before vanishing back into the Empire of Death. Today, the official Catacombs Museum is only a tiny fraction of the network. The rest belongs to the cataphiles. These are the modern ghosts of Paris. They enter through manholes in the middle of the night. They have their own culture, their own maps, and their own police force, the cataflics, who patrol the tunnels on foot. But why go down there? Because in a world of constant surveillance and GPS, the tunnels are the last dark zone. No phones, no signals, total silence. But that silence is a trap. In 1793, a man named Philibert Asper, a doorkeeper at a local hospital, entered the tunnels looking for a secret cellar of liqueur. He carried only a single candle. It's believed his candle went out in the damp air. He was found 11 years later, identified only by the keys on his belt. He was just a few yards from an exit. He had spent his final hours clawing at the walls in total, absolute darkness. Paris exists in two layers. One is a city of romance. The other is a city of bone. They are separated by only a few feet of stone, but they represent two different versions of humanity. One is obsessed with the future. The other is a permanent record of the past. At the entrance of the ossuary, the sign still warns, "Stop, this is the Empire of Death." But for the people of Paris, it's more than that. It's a refuge, a foundation, a secret. The surface world changes, empires rise and fall, but beneath the streets of Paris, the dead remain exactly where they were placed, stacked in silence beneath a city that often forgets they are there. This is the Lost World Project.